The silver tray slipped from Sophia Kensington's hand and shattered across the marble floor. The crash echoed through the grand hall like thunder. "Maria!" she shouted, glaring at the trembling maid in the doorway. "How many times must I tell you? Polish, then serve. Not the other way around." Maria lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry, ma'am. It won't happen again." Sophia exhaled sharply and turned away. Her mornings were always the same. Coffee too cold, staff too slow, meetings too long. The Kensington estate ran on perfection, and she tolerated nothing less. She prided herself on discipline, on control, on the silent respect that followed her wherever she went. But that morning, Maria didn't leave right away. She lingered near the edge of the room, her fingers nervously gripping her apron. "Something else?" Sophia asked, without looking up from her phone. Maria swallowed. "Yes, ma'am. There's something I'd like to ask." Sophia finally glanced at her, irritated. "Ask quickly. I have a call in 5 minutes." Maria hesitated, her voice almost trembling. "Ma'am, may I request something unusual? Just for one day, would you wear my uniform? Pretend to be me." Sophia blinked, thinking she'd misheard. "Excuse me." Maria looked up, her dark eyes steady now. "I want you to wear my uniform and live as a maid, just for a day. I'll take your role and you'll take mine." For a moment, the only sound was the slow ticking of the clock. Then Sophia laughed, short, cold, dismissive. "You must be joking." "I'm not," Maria said quietly. "I want you to see what life looks like from down here. Please." Sophia set her phone aside and crossed her arms. "And why would I do that? Have you lost your mind?" "Because I'll be leaving soon," Maria said. "And before I go, I want you to understand something." "Understand what?" Maria's eyes glistened. "That kindness is not weakness. But the people who clean your floors have stories too." Sophia's smile faded. "You're becoming philosophical, Maria. That's not part of your job description." "Maybe it should be," Maria whispered. Sophia stared at her. No one had ever spoken to her like that. The maid's words lodged somewhere deep, somewhere uncomfortable. "Fine," she said finally, more to end the conversation than agree. "You want me to play your silly little game? I'll do it, but only for one day." Maria nodded, relief softening her face. "Tomorrow morning, ma'am. I'll prepare everything." When Maria left, Sophia sank onto the sofa, still frowning. She couldn't believe what she'd agreed to. Her maid had lost her mind, or perhaps she'd simply grown too bold. Either way, Sophia planned to prove a point. She'd show Maria that her job was hardly as difficult as she made it seem. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the tall windows, and Sophia stood before the mirror wearing Maria's uniform. The black dress, the plain white apron, it felt foreign, almost humiliating. Her perfectly manicured hands looked wrong against the coarse fabric. Maria entered wearing one of Sophia's tailored blouses and a simple pearl necklace. "You look perfect," she said softly. "Are you ready?" Sophia forced a smirk. "Ready to prove you wrong." "Then start with the kitchen. Breakfast for the staff." Sophia frowned. "The staff? I'm not feeding the staff." "Today you are," Maria said calmly, her tone eerily authoritative. "You said you wanted to see how easy it is." Sophia rolled her eyes, but obeyed. She moved through her own kitchen, unsure where half the utensils were. The stove hissed. The smell of frying eggs filled the air. Within minutes, the heat was unbearable. Too hot, she muttered, wiping her forehead. The gardener, Thomas, entered through the back door. "Hey, new girl," he said gruffly. "You done with those plates yet? We're starving." Sophia froze. "Excuse me." He frowned. "What, you deaf? We eat at 8. It's 10 past. She wanted to shout her identity, to remind him whose house this was, but that would ruin the game. She clenched her jaw. "Almost ready," she said through her teeth. Thomas grunted and left, muttering something about lazy help. By the time breakfast was done, the kitchen was a disaster. Flour on the counter, butter melting on the floor, dishes piled high. Sophia stared at the mess, her hand shaking. She'd never realized how heavy a frying pan could feel. Maria walked in, calm and composed, sipping from Sophia's porcelain cup. "How did it go?" Sophia glared at her. "Your job is chaos. I don't know how you stand it." Maria smiled faintly. "Now you know." The day dragged on. Sophia swept floors until her back ached, scrubbed windows until her arms burned. Each room looked larger than before, more impossible to clean. She found herself wishing for silence, for the comfort of her office chair and morning espresso. When the clock struck 6, she collapsed on the servant's cot in the small maid's quarters. Her body screamed in protest. The air was stuffy, the ceiling too low. She noticed a small wooden box beneath the bed, old, dusty, carved with initials she didn't recognize. For a moment, curiosity flickered, but exhaustion won. She closed her eyes, promising herself she'd look at it later. And somewhere in the darkness, as she drifted into uneasy sleep, a question whispered in her mind. Why did Maria really ask me to do this? If you're still watching, make sure to subscribe and stay with us, because what Sophia discovers next will change everything. The next morning arrived with the sound of distant thunder. Sophia had left early, humming as she mopped the marble floors. But her mind wasn't calm. She kept glancing at the tall staircase, half expecting her boss to change his mind. At 10:30 sharp, the doorbell rang. Sophia rushed to open it, and there stood Ethan dressed in a plain maid's uniform. The black dress was slightly too small for his broad shoulders, and the white apron looked ridiculous against his expensive watch. But his face was serious. "Good morning, Miss Sophia," he said, mockingly bowing his head. "What's first on the list?" Sophia blinked, speechless for a second. "You're actually doing it? You said I wouldn't understand until I did, didn't you?" Ethan replied. "So here I am. Let's begin before I regret it." She handed him a mop, biting back a laugh. "Start with the kitchen. Floors first, then counters. Oh, and don't forget the corners. Dust gathers there." Ethan gave her a sarcastic salute. "Yes, boss." What started as a light-hearted joke quickly turned into something else. Within 10 minutes, Ethan's white shirt was sticking to his skin. The sweat on his forehead was real. The mop handle slipped from his hand, splattering dirty water on the spotless tiles. "This thing weighs a ton," he muttered. "Now you know what I do every day," Sophia said softly, her tone losing the teasing edge. "But we're not done yet." Hours passed. Ethan vacuumed, wiped mirrors, folded laundry, things he hadn't done since college. His arms ached. His patience wore thin. But every time he looked up, he saw Sophia watching him quietly, a strange mix of pride and sorrow in her eyes. "Why do you keep staring at me like that?" he asked, dropping onto the couch. "Because," she said, "you're the first person who ever listened." That sentence hung heavy between them. Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Sophia hesitated. "I've worked here for 2 years. No one has ever asked me if I'm okay. No one cared if I had to walk an hour to get home, or if my hands were bleeding from scrubbing." She lifted her palms, and for the first time, he noticed the small scars lining them. He sat forward, suddenly sober. Sophia, I didn't know. People like me are invisible, sir, she said. You only see the clean floors, not the hands that made them that way. Ethan didn't have an answer. For the first time, silence didn't feel awkward. It felt heavy with realization. Later that evening, Sophia brought him a glass of water. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, still in the maid uniform, hair tousled, an expression unreadable. Tell me something, he said quietly. Why did you want me to do this? Sophia took a deep breath. Because my mother used to be a maid. She worked for a rich family who treated her worse than furniture. She died cleaning their house. Ethan froze. I didn't know. You wouldn't, Sophia said gently. You weren't supposed to. But she always told me, don't let people's money make you forget their humanity. She smiled faintly. I just wanted you to see it too. For a long time, Ethan didn't speak. He just nodded slowly, his throat tight. The next morning, Ethan didn't come down for breakfast. Sophia assumed he'd gone back to being his usual self. But when she entered the living room, she found something strange. A note on the table and a small black card beside it. The note read, Meet me at the old cafe on Willow Street at 6 p.m. There's something I want to show you. Sophia frowned. Ethan never left the mansion unless for meetings. Still, curiosity got the better of her. When she arrived at the cafe that evening, she almost didn't recognize him. He was wearing jeans, a plain shirt, and no bodyguards. He looked normal. I wanted to apologize, he began, for everything. She shook her head. You don't need to. I do, he interrupted. I've lived in this bubble for years. You popped it in one day. I can't undo how blind I've been. Then he slid the black card across the table. This is a business card for my foundation. We're starting a new program to support domestic workers. Fair pay, education, healthcare. I want you to lead it. Sophia blinked, stunned. Me? You understand what they go through, Ethan said. You care. That's more than I can say for anyone I've met in a long time. Sophia's lips trembled. I don't know what to say. Say yes, he said softly. Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. Yes. Ethan smiled. Then it settled. From maid to director in 1 week. I'd say that's a record. Sophia laughed through her tears, and for a moment, both of them sat in that small cafe. Two very different worlds finally meeting in the middle. But as she left the cafe, a strange unease crept into her. Something didn't add up. She'd never told Ethan where her mother worked, or even her full name. So how did he know about her past when she never mentioned details? That night, she couldn't sleep. The mansion was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock. Around midnight, curiosity got the best of her. She crept downstairs toward Ethan's study, the one room he never let anyone enter. The door was slightly ajar. She pushed it open and froze. Inside, on the massive mahogany desk, were dozens of old photographs. Some of them showed maids in uniforms. Different faces, same sorrow. Others were reports, receipts, letters, and there at the center was a faded picture of her mother. Sophia's hand trembled as she picked it up. Her heart raced. The back of the photo had a note. Property of Hargrove Estate. That was Ethan's surname. Her breath caught. Her mother had worked here in this very mansion, years before Sophia ever did. Suddenly, the lights flicked on behind her. Ethan stood in the doorway. I was hoping you wouldn't find that tonight. Sophia turned slowly, her voice shaking. You knew my mother. He sighed. Yes, and I've been trying to make things right ever since. Before she could speak, he added. But you deserve to know the truth. The story was far from over. Sophia's hands went cold as she stared at him. The air in the study felt heavy, like the room itself was holding its breath. "You lied to me," she whispered. "I didn't lie," Ethan said carefully, stepping closer. "I just didn't tell you everything." She shook her head, backing away. "You knew who I was before I even started working here." "I did," he admitted. "When your resume came in, I saw your last name. I recognized it instantly. Your mother, Maria Santos, worked here when I was a boy." Sophia's pulse pounded in her ears. "My mother worked for your family? Then why didn't you tell me?" Ethan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Because my father was responsible for what happened to her." Her knees nearly gave out. "What are you saying?" He gestured toward the desk, his voice low. "My father ran this estate like a prison. The maids, the gardeners, the drivers, they were treated like they didn't matter. One winter night, your mother collapsed while scrubbing the floors. My father refused to call a doctor because he said maids are replaceable. She died right there in the hallway. I was 15. I saw it happen." Sophia covered her mouth, tears welling up. "And you never said anything?" "I tried," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "I told the police. They laughed in my face because of who my father was. When he died, I inherited everything. The house, the business, the guilt. I thought if I could do one thing right, maybe I could start to make amends." He pointed to the foundation file. "That's why I started the program. That's why I wanted you to run it." Sophia's heart was torn between rage and disbelief. "You think hiring me fixes everything? You think it brings my mother back?" "No," he said, eyes glistening. "But maybe it keeps what happened to her from happening again." The silence that followed was painful. The only sound was the clock ticking behind them, marking each second like a heartbeat. "I trusted you," she said quietly. "I told you things I've never told anyone. And I wanted to earn that trust honestly," he replied. "I just didn't know how to tell you the truth without losing it." She turned away, gripping the photo tightly. "You already lost it." Ethan's shoulders sank. "Then, at least let me help you find closure." Sophia's eyes flicked toward the picture again. "You said you saw her die." He nodded. "Then show me where," she said. He hesitated, but the look in her eyes told him this wasn't a request. Slowly, he led her down the corridor, their footsteps echoing in the vast, empty mansion. The hall was dimly lit, dust motes floating in the glow of the wall lamps. He stopped near a large staircase. "Here," he said quietly. "This is where she fell." Sophia stared at the floorboards, her vision blurring. She could almost see it, her mother, exhausted, struggling to breathe, alone. The weight of years pressed on her chest until she could hardly stand. "Do you ever hear her?" Sophia whispered. Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes when I clean this hallway," she said, tears streaming down her face, "I feel like someone's watching me. I thought it was just my imagination." Ethan swallowed hard. "Maybe she was trying to tell you the truth before I did." Sophia knelt, touching the floor where her mother had taken her last breath. She worked her whole life for people who never saw her, and now her daughter does the same job in the same house. "You don't see the irony?" "I do," he said. "That's why I want it to end." She stood abruptly. "End? You can't end the past, Ethan. You can't erase what your family did." "No," he said quietly, "but I can change what mine becomes." The conviction in his voice made her pause. He continued, "The foundation isn't charity. It's justice. Fair contracts, medical benefits, proper working conditions, not just for my employees, but for every domestic worker in the city. I've already set up meetings with the unions." Sophia stared at him, uncertain whether to believe him. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because," he said, stepping closer, "I can't do it without you." For a moment neither spoke. Then Sophia turned away, whispering, "You should have told me the truth from the start." "You were right," Ethan said. "And if you want to quit tomorrow, I'll understand. But if there's still a part of you that wants to make a difference, help me do it. For her." Sophia's lips trembled. She wanted to scream, cry, run, but somewhere inside her, her mother's voice whispered, "Don't let anger blind you to purpose." She took a deep breath. "If I do this, I'm not doing it for you." "I wouldn't want you to," he said. "I'm doing it for her, for every woman like her." Ethan nodded solemnly. "Then we'll start tomorrow." She brushed past him, heading for her room. As she reached the door, she turned slightly. "One more thing." "Yes." "If you ever lied to me again, Ethan Hargrove, I'll destroy everything you built. Do you understand?" He smiled sadly. "Perfectly." That night, Sophia couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed every word, every image of her mother. Yet for the first time, there was something else. A spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this pain could build something good. Weeks passed. Together, they worked tirelessly. Sophia interviewed workers, wrote proposals, confronted agencies that had underpaid staff for years. Ethan handled the funding and legal work, but he let Sophia take the lead. Their partnership grew stronger, but so did the whispers in the city. People began asking questions. Reporters dug into the Hargrove family's past, and soon an article broke. Hargrove linked to Maid's death in 2002. The news went viral overnight. By morning, protesters gathered outside the mansion gates. Sophia woke up to shouting and camera flashes. When she stepped outside, a journalist shoved a microphone in her face. "Miss Santos, is it true your employer's father caused your mother's death? Are you working for him out of pity or revenge?" Sophia froze. "Leave her alone," Ethan barked, rushing out behind her. But the reporters only swarmed closer. Sophia grabbed his arm, whispering sharply, "Don't say anything. Let me handle this." She stepped forward, eyes blazing. "My mother's story is not gossip," she said firmly. "It's a tragedy that pushed me to fight for justice. And Mr. Hargrove is not his father. He's the reason this foundation exists. We're here to protect those like her, not exploit them." Her voice shook, but her words cut through the chaos. Cameras flashed. The crowd slowly quieted. That night, their statement dominated every headline. Some people called her brave. Others said she'd been manipulated. But one thing was certain. People were listening. And just as things began to calm, a letter arrived in the mail. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was elegant and familiar. "You don't know the full truth. Maria's death wasn't an accident. Ask Ethan what really happened that night." Sophia's hands trembled as she read the note again. The story wasn't over. Not yet. If you've been following Sophia and Ethan's story this far, hit that like button and tell us in the comments. Do you think Ethan is telling the truth? Subscribe now, because what Sophia discovers next will shock you. The letter sat on Sophia's lap like a burning coal. She read it again and again until the words blurred into one chilling line. Ask Ethan what really happened that night. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. The night her mother died. Ethan said she collapsed. He said his father refused to help. But what if that wasn't the full truth? What if there was something darker? She stood abruptly, the letter crumpled in her trembling hand, and marched down the hall. Ethan was in the study again, staring at documents, unaware of the storm heading his way. "Ethan," she said sharply. He looked up. "Sophia, what's wrong?" She threw a letter on his desk. "This. Who sent it?" He picked it up, scanning the words, and his face went pale. "Answer me," she demanded. I don't know," he said quietly. "Don't lie to me." "I'm not," he said, his voice cracking. "But whoever wrote this, they know something." Sophia leaned closer. "Then tell me, Ethan. Tell me what really happened that night." He closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. You deserve the truth, he said. But it's not easy to hear. Say it. He stood and walked toward the window. The rain had started outside, streaking down the glass like tears. That night, I wasn't just a bystander, he said quietly. I was the reason she collapsed. Sophia froze. What? I was 15, Ethan said, his voice breaking. My father was hosting a party. I spilled wine on the carpet, and he started yelling. He ordered your mother to clean it while guests were still there. She looked exhausted. She'd been working since dawn. I remember snapping at her to hurry up. His voice trembled. She was kneeling on the floor trying to scrub the stain, when she suddenly clutched her chest. I thought she fainted. I shouted for help, but my father told everyone to keep drinking. He said, don't ruin the evening over serving. Sophia's breath hitched. I froze, Ethan whispered. I didn't do anything. I just watched. She died there, and I did nothing. The room felt like it was collapsing around her. Sophia's knees weakened. You watched my mother die, she whispered. I was a boy, Ethan pleaded. I didn't understand. You understood enough to shout at her, she snapped. You made her hurry. You. She stopped, her voice breaking. You were part of it. He didn't argue. He just stood there, guilt etched across his face. Yes, I was. The silence that followed was unbearable. Sophia turned away, tears streaming down her cheeks. All this time, I thought you were trying to make up for your father's sins. But you were trying to make up for your own. Ethan swallowed hard. You're right. I've lived with that guilt every day. Every time I walk through this house, I see your face. That's why I couldn't tell you the whole truth. I was terrified you'd hate me. I do, she whispered. Right now I do. He didn't move. He just nodded. The words hitting him like a sentence he knew he deserved. Sophia stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Upstairs, she collapsed onto her bed, sobbing until her chest ached. The rain outside grew heavier, matching the chaos inside her heart. Hours passed. The mansion was silent except for the storm. Somewhere in the distance, she heard the faint sound of piano keys. Ethan, playing alone in the dark. The melody was haunting, broken. She covered her ears, trying not to feel the ache in his notes. But the sound crept into her like confession. By morning, she was gone. She left a note on his desk. You can't fix the past by pretending to be someone else. Don't contact me. For weeks, Ethan didn't. He shut down the foundation launch, stayed in the house alone, and drowned in regret. The world outside forgot about the story. The mansion fell quiet again, until one afternoon months later, a familiar voice called from the gate. He opened the door to find Sophia standing there. Different, stronger. She held a folder in her hand. I came to return this, she said, handing him a set of documents, plans for the foundation. He hesitated. You didn't have to come. I know, she said, but I thought you should know what I did with it. She opened the folder, revealing new branding, new faces, new leadership. I started my own organization. It's called Maria's Hands. It's independent, community-funded, and run entirely by domestic workers. I used the training you gave me, but I built it my way. Ethan looked at her with quiet awe. That's incredible. It's justice, she said. And before you ask, no, I'm not here to forgive you. Forgiveness isn't something you ask for once and receive. It's something you earn. He nodded slowly. And how do I earn it? By showing up, she said. By funding the change, not owning it. Donate anonymously. Help from the shadows. No more headlines. No more guilt speeches. Ethan smiled faintly. You sound like her. Sophia's eyes softened. She'd have wanted you to do better. Not for her, but for yourself. They stood there in silence. Two broken souls facing the same truth from different sides. After a long pause, she said, We're hosting our first event tomorrow. You can come if you can handle seeing me again. Ethan nodded. I'll be there. The next evening, the community hall buzzed with laughter and warmth. Women in aprons, uniforms, and plain dresses filled the room. Banners of Maria's Hands hung proudly across the walls. Sophia stood at the podium, her voice steady, strong. This started with one woman's story, she said. A woman who worked herself to death for people who never saw her. But her daughter grew up, and she made sure no one like her mother would ever be invisible again. The crowd erupted in applause. At the back of the hall, Ethan watched quietly, tears glistening in his eyes. He didn't stand near the cameras. He didn't speak. He just listened. After the event, Sophia found him near the door. "You came." "I said I would," he said softly. "You've done something amazing, Sophia." She looked at him for a moment, then extended her hand. "Thank you for giving me a start, even if the reason was wrong." He shook her hand, emotion tightening his throat. "Thank you for turning my guilt into something good." She smiled faintly. "My mother always said pain has two paths, revenge or rebirth. I chose the latter." He nodded. "And I'm glad you did." As she turned to leave, Ethan called out, "Sophia?" She paused. "I still hear the piano at night," he said quietly. "Sometimes I like to think she's listening." Sophia smiled sadly, then play something she'd be proud of. And with that, she walked away, into a future her mother never had, but one she built for every woman who would come after her. Ethan stood alone in the doorway, the sound of laughter echoing in the distance. Then slowly he turned toward the empty hall, sat the piano on stage, and began to play the melody her mother used to hum while cleaning. The audience fell silent. Each note carried years of pain, regret, and something close to peace. For the first time, the mansion boy and the maid's daughter weren't separated by guilt or class. They were connected by truth. And though their story was born from tragedy, it ended with purpose. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe for more powerful stories like The Maid's Request. And let us know in the comments, do you believe people like Ethan can truly change? Your thoughts might inspire the next story we tell.